The great halls of the Zychron High Council were filled with voices of power and pride. Tall, armored figures sat on their thrones, their glowing eyes fixed on the holographic map of the galaxy. In the center of the room stood General Zychron, a decorated war veteran, his scared face a reminder of countless battles fought for the Zychron Empire. Zychron's voice was deep, firm, and filled with urgency. "We must not invade Earth." The room fell silent. Then, a moment later, laughter erupted from the council members. The Emperor himself, a towering figure with golden armor, leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Are you telling us, General, that you, one of our greatest warriors, fear a planet of primitive creatures?" Zychron clenched his fists but did not lower his head. "I do not fear them, my Emperor, but I have fought them, and I know what they are capable of." The youngest commander in the room, Vark, smirked. "With all due respect, General, Earth is nothing. Their weapons are outdated. Their fleets are weak. They are not a threat." Zychron turned to him, his voice now cold. "That is exactly what I thought before my fleet was destroyed by them." A murmur spread through the council. They had heard rumors, whispers of a failed mission, of an army that never returned. But the Empire never acknowledged failures. They always won. The Emperor tapped his claws against the metal of his throne. "Explain, General." Zychron took a deep breath. He had seen the horrors of Earth's warriors, and he knew the truth. Humans are not like other species. We have conquered planets where enemies surrendered the moment they saw our warships. But humans fight differently. They do not surrender. They adapt, they think, and worst of all, they never stop coming. One of the council members scoffed. "So they are stubborn. That is not strength, General." Zychron shook his head. "It is not just stubbornness. It is something else. I saw it with my own eyes. They can be outnumbered, outgunned, and backed into a corner, but somehow, they still win." The Emperor leaned back, considering his words. "If they are so strong, why have they not conquered the stars?" Zychron's expression darkened. "Because they do not seek war. But when war comes to them, they become something terrifying." Commander Vark crossed his arms. "I have read the reports, General. The last time our forces engaged humans, it was a minor skirmish. Surely, you exaggerate their strength." Zychron's fists tightened. "It was no minor skirmish. My fleet attacked a single human outpost, a colony with barely 5,000 civilians. We expected them to fall within hours. Instead, they fought us for weeks. Farmers, engineers, even children. They all became soldiers. They used our own weapons against us. They hacked our communication systems. They turned our supply lines into traps. They do not fight fair. They fight to survive." The council members looked at each other. They had heard similar stories, but none had taken them seriously. The Emperor sighed. "General, you have served this empire for decades. I respect your experience, but you forget who we are." He raised a hand, gesturing to the vast holographic map. "We have crushed entire civilizations. We have never lost a war. You say humans fight hard. So what? So did the Drakari. So did the Zindra. And where are they now?" Silence. Those races were gone, wiped out. The Zychron Empire was unstoppable. The Emperor smiled. "We will not fear a primitive species. We will take Earth, and we will make them bow like all the others." Zychron felt a cold dread in his chest. They did not understand. He took a step forward. "My Emperor, listen to me. If you invade Earth, it will not be like the Drakari. It will not be like the Zindra. Humans will not just fight back. They will find a way to defeat you. And when they do, they will not stop until your empire is nothing but dust." The Emperor's smile faded. His glowing eyes locked onto Zychron. The tension in the room was thick. Then, with a slow wave of his hand, the Emperor dismissed him. "You are dismissed, General. The invasion begins tomorrow. Zyron's heart sank. He turned, walking toward the exit, knowing that nothing he said would change their minds. Before he stepped out, he turned back one last time. His voice was almost a whisper, but the whole room heard him. You think you are bringing war to Earth, but you are wrong. You are inviting Earth's war to you. And with that, he left. As the great doors closed behind him, the Zycran fleet prepared for war. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Cliffhanger. The first fleet of 100 warships leaves for Earth, unaware that this will be the last mistake the Zycran Empire ever makes. General Zyron stood in silence, watching from the shadows as the Zycran war fleet roared to life. Hundreds of warships, their black metallic hulls glistening under the light of the twin moons, began to ascend into the vastness of space. The Emperor's orders had been carried out. The invasion of Earth had begun. Zyron clenched his fists. He had seen too much war to believe in the Empire's arrogance. He had seen the way humans fought, like cornered beasts with nothing to lose. No matter how many times he replayed his past battles with them in his mind, one thing was always clear: humans never surrendered. A cold voice broke his thoughts. You still doubt the Empire's strength, General? Zyron turned to see Commander Vark standing behind him, arms crossed, a smirk on his reptilian face. The younger officer had always been ambitious, eager to prove himself in battle. Zyron knew that look, the same reckless confidence that had led thousands to their deaths before. I do not doubt the Empire, Zyron said, his voice firm but weary. I doubt its leaders. Vark chuckled, spoken like a soldier who has forgotten what true power looks like. He gestured toward the massive fleet vanishing into hyperspace. Our victory is inevitable. Humanity is outmatched. Their technology is inferior. Their armies are small. This war will be over in days. Zyron sighed. That's what I thought once, until I saw 100 human soldiers destroy an entire battalion of our elite warriors. Vark rolled his eyes. More of your ghost stories. You give humans too much credit. Zyron didn't argue. He had already spoken his warnings, and they had fallen on deaf ears. Now, all he could do was wait, and he knew the waiting would not last long. Far across the galaxy, the first wave of Zycran warships emerged from hyperspace just outside Earth's orbit. The commanding officer of the fleet, Admiral Cadris, sat comfortably in his war throne aboard the Dominator, the largest and most powerful vessel in the fleet. The planet before him looked small, fragile, almost helpless. He turned to his bridge crew. Initiate planetary scan. I want a full report on their defenses. A holographic projection of Earth appeared before them. The crew analyzed the data with amusement. Cadris smirked. Pathetic. No planetary shields, no orbital defenses, no battle-ready fleets. He leaned back in his chair. Prepare the invasion forces. Deploy ground troops to their largest cities. Let's see how long they last. But just as the order was given, something unexpected happened. Admiral, one of the officers shouted in alarm. We're detecting an anomaly. Multiple fast-moving objects approaching from the planet's surface. Cadris frowned. Weapons fire. No, sir. There. Before the officer could finish, the entire warship shook violently. The bridge was filled with alarms as red warning lights flashed across every console. Cadris gripped the armrests of his throne. Report. What just hit us? The officer's eyes widened in disbelief. Sir, those objects. They're human fighter jets. The bridge fell silent. Then, a second later, the comms exploded with reports from across the fleet. They're attacking. Multiple squadrons of human aircraft are engaging our forward ships. Energy readings spiking. Enemy forces are using electromagnetic weapons to disrupt our sensors. Our battleships are losing guidance systems. We can't get a lock on their movements. Cadris could hardly believe what he was hearing. Human aircraft. Attacking them. It was absurd. The Zycran Empire had fought countless wars, conquered hundreds of worlds, and no species had ever dared to challenge them in open battle. And yet here they were, humans, fighting back. Another explosion rocked the Dominator. Cadrus growled in frustration. Enough of this. Activate point defense systems. Wipe these insects from the sky. Turrets on the Zycran ships came to life, filling the void with deadly plasma fire. The human fighters moved fast, too fast, dodging and weaving between the energy blasts with impossible precision. They weren't just attacking blindly. They were targeting weak points, engines, communication arrays, and shield generators. Cadrus watched in horror as several of his warships were disabled within minutes. He turned to his officers. They're adapting too quickly. We need tow. Before he could finish, the ship lurched forward. A violent explosion shook the entire deck. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The main screen flickered, showing something that made Cadrus' blood run cold. A human missile had just pierced the hull of one of their command ships. Not just any missile, one carrying a nuclear warhead. And then, it detonated. A blinding explosion lit up the battlefield, vaporizing everything in its radius. Cadrus shielded his eyes, his mind unable to comprehend what he was witnessing. The Zycran fleet had come expecting an easy victory, but instead they had walked into a storm. The comms crackled again. This time, it wasn't a Zycran officer speaking. It was a human voice, calm, steady, and filled with absolute confidence. This is Commander James Carter of Earth's Defense Forces. To the Zycran fleet, you are not welcome here. Leave now or be destroyed. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. No alien race had ever dared to threaten the Zycran Empire. Cadrus' claws dug into his throne. His mind raced. How was this possible? How could a race of primitives have this kind of power? But the battle had only just begun. And for the first time in his life, he felt fear. The war was supposed to be over before it even began. At least, that was what the Zycran Empire had believed. They had underestimated Earth. And now, they were paying the price. Deep within the Zycran flagship, Dominator, Admiral Cadrus sat in tense silence. The bridge was in chaos. Officers shouted over one another. Alarms blared, and the once impenetrable fleet was now fractured. A battle that should have lasted mere hours had turned into a nightmare. Admiral, our forward ships have been completely neutralized. We've lost 3 command vessels and over 40 smaller warships. Cadrus clenched his fists. How? How had a primitive species, one without planetary shields or interstellar defenses, managed to inflict this much damage? Where are the ground forces? He demanded. The officer hesitated. Sir, the drop pods were intercepted. Cadrus narrowed his eyes. Intercepted? By what? The answer made his blood freeze. Humans, sir. They hijacked our own landing crafts and used them against us. The bridge fell silent. For a brief moment, no one spoke. No one could, because the truth was undeniable. The Zycran Empire, the most feared force in the galaxy, was being outsmarted. Cadrus turned toward the holographic display. It showed Earth, still intact, still fighting back. What was supposed to be an easy conquest had turned into something far worse. It had turned into a trap. Admiral, another officer said, his voice unsteady, we've detected new energy signatures from Earth's surface. They don't match anything in our database. Cadrus' cold eyes snapped toward him. Explain. The officer swallowed hard. Sir, it appears the humans have developed a new kind of weaponry. It's not just nuclear, it's something else. Something adaptive. Cadrus' mind raced. He had seen battle across countless worlds, but never had he heard of a species adapting mid-war. It was impossible. Evolution took centuries, millennia even. And yet, here they were, humans, defying every rule of warfare. Then something even more disturbing happened. Sir, incoming transmission. It's from the humans. Cadrus' jaw tightened. Put it through. The holographic display flickered, and then, for the first time in Zychron history, an Earth general appeared before them. He was calm, unshaken, not a single trace of fear in his eyes. "This is General Marcus Hale of the Earth Defense Command," the human said, his voice steady. "You came here expecting to conquer. Instead, you've walked into your own grave." Cadris let out a low growl. "You think you can threaten us? We have crushed civilizations far stronger than yours." Hale's expression didn't change. "I don't think you understand. We knew you were coming. We let you come. And now, we are going to show you why that was a mistake." The transmission cut. For a long moment, the bridge remained eerily silent. The Zychron officers exchanged uneasy glances. Even Cadris himself felt something he had never felt before, a feeling that no Zychron warrior had ever known. Doubt. "Admiral," a technician said, his voice shaking. "Sensors are detecting movement. Hundreds, no, thousands, of unidentified aerial units are rising from Earth's surface." Cadris frowned. "Impossible. We scanned the planet. They had nothing that advanced." "Sir," the officer whispered, "we were wrong." On the main screen, they appeared. A swarm of high-speed, AI-enhanced drones, moving faster than any Zychron warship could track. But that wasn't the worst part. Behind the drones, launching from hidden underground bases, came human battleships, sleek, compact, and deadly. And they were heading straight for the Dominator. Cadris shot up from his throne. "All batteries, fire at will. Destroy them now." Zychron warships opened fire, plasma bolts streaking through the blackness of space. But the human forces were too fast. The drones maneuvered between the shots like they could predict every move. One by one, Zychron ships were picked apart. Their weak points were targeted with precision. Their shields overloaded within seconds. The Dominator shook violently. Sparks rained from the ceiling as entire sections of the ship exploded. "Admiral, shields are failing. Hull integrity at 32%. Cadris could hardly process what was happening. The Zychron fleet, the greatest in the Empire's history, was losing. Not to a superior force, not to advanced alien technology, but to humans. And then the final blow came. The main screen flickered. A new transmission came through. It wasn't General Hale this time. It was a soldier. He stood in a dimly lit war room, his uniform marked with battle scars. His expression was cold. "My name is Captain Elias Ford," the soldier said, "and I was there when you slaughtered my people. I saw what you did to our colonies. And now," his voice darkened, "now I get to watch you burn." A countdown appeared on the screen. 10, 9, 8. Cadris' breath caught in his throat. 7, 6. His claws dug into the armrests. 5, 4. His officers panicked, screaming, running, desperate to regain control. 3, 2, 1. The screen flashed red. A single word appeared: "Goodbye." And then the world exploded. Flames consumed the Dominator as the shockwave from the explosion rippled through space. The once mighty Zychron flagship, the heart of their invasion force, had been reduced to debris. The surviving Zychron warships were thrown into chaos. Their admiral was dead, their command structure shattered. On board the Harbinger, the second in command, High Strategist Vecron, stood frozen as the flames of the Dominator's destruction reflected in his cold reptilian eyes. This cannot be happening," he whispered. But it was happening. The great Zychron Empire, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, was being humiliated by a species they had mocked as primitive. And the worst part, the humans weren't done yet. "Sir," an officer gasped, his voice trembling, "we are detecting anomalous signals from the remains of the Dominator." Vecron narrowed his eyes. "Clarify." The officer swallowed hard. "Sir, they left something behind." A transmission interrupted their conversation. The main view screen flickered, and once again, a human face appeared, General Marcus Hale. His expression was unreadable, his gaze unwavering. "Zycran Fleet," Hale began, his voice steady. "You have lost. Your flagship is destroyed. Your warships are in disarray. You have one chance to leave our system alive." Vecran bared his fangs. "You dare dictate terms to us? We will not surrender to a lesser species." Hale didn't react. "You seem to misunderstand," he said. "We're not asking you to surrender. We're giving you an opportunity to escape before it's too late." The Zycran officers on the bridge shifted uncomfortably. Their fleet was crippled, their forces outmaneuvered at every turn. Vecran let out a low growl. "Even if we retreat now, the Emperor will have our heads." Hale tilted his head slightly. "That's your problem, not ours." Then he leaned forward, his tone turning colder. "But I should warn you, you're already running out of time." Vecran's claws twitched. "What do you mean?" Hale simply smiled. "See for yourself." The transmission ended, and then the Zycran sensors lit up. A storm of human warships and AI-controlled drones surged toward the remaining Zycran fleet. But it wasn't just that. Something far worse was happening. "Sir," a technician whispered in horror, "the Dominator's wreckage. It's moving." Vecran's blood ran cold. "Explain." The officer's hands trembled as he displayed the data. "Sir, they planted something. Some kind of hacking virus in our systems before the Dominator exploded. Our own defense protocols are being overridden." A sharp beep filled the air. Then another, and another. The Zycran warships were turning against each other. One by one, they began firing on their own fleet. Some ships shut down entirely, their power drained in an instant. Others detonated from within, their internal systems compromised beyond repair. Panic erupted on the bridge. Officers shouted over one another, trying to regain control. But it was too late. The humans hadn't just beaten them in battle. They had hacked their warships, taken over their technology, and used it against them. Vecran's breathing grew unsteady. They planned this. The realization struck him like a thunderbolt. This entire war, this whole conflict, had been a trap from the beginning. The humans knew the Zycran Empire would come. They wanted them to. They had studied their tactics, cracked their codes, and now they were delivering the killing blow. The Harbinger shook violently. Explosions rippled through the fleet as human weapons ripped through Zycran hulls. The once glorious Zycran invasion force had been turned into wreckage. Vecran turned to his remaining officers. "Prepare for a jump to hyperspace. Now." One of them hesitated. "Sir, what do we tell the Emperor?" Vecran's claws dug into his seat. "We tell him the truth." He looked back at the battlefield, watching as human warships tore through what little remained of his once mighty fleet. The truth was simple. The Zycran Empire had underestimated humanity. And now they were paying the price. The Harginger's engines roared as it broke through the battlefield, leaving behind a graveyard of Zycran warships. The once mighty invasion fleet was reduced to smoldering wreckage, their forces crushed, their pride shattered. High Strategist Vecran sat in the dimly lit command chamber of the Harbinger, staring at the tactical display. The numbers were brutal. Out of the 50 Zycran warships that had entered the Sol system, only 5 had made it out. The rest had been destroyed, hijacked, or left drifting in space like useless husks. The Zycran Empire had never suffered such a loss. Not once. Vecran's claws tapped against the metallic surface of the console. The damage report scrolled across the screen. Shields at 20%, hyperdrive unstable, and worst of all, a tracking signal. His cold, reptilian eyes narrowed. The humans had done something to their ship before they escaped. Some kind of virus, a parasite in their systems. They weren't just letting them leave. They were following them. A low growl rumbled in his throat. "Get me a link to the Imperial Command." A few agonizing moments passed before the whole of display flickered to life. And there, standing tall, was the Emperor of the Zycran Empire himself, Emperor Xyrel. His dark golden scales shimmered under the throne room's artificial lights, his long, jagged crown of bone giving him an air of undeniable authority. But his piercing, amber eyes burned with rage. "Vecren," the Emperor said slowly, his voice dangerously calm. "I assume you bring me news of your victory." Vecren hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then, lowering his gaze, he spoke the words that had never before been uttered by a Zycran officer. "We have lost." Silence. Then the Emperor's tail lashed violently against the floor. "Explain." Vecren clenched his jaw. "The humans were not what we expected. They fought with a level of tactical brilliance we have never encountered. They anticipated our every move. They infiltrated our systems, turned our own warships against us. Enough." The Emperor's voice was sharp, deadly. His golden eyes narrowed. "You tell me that the great Zycran fleet, with all its advanced weaponry, all its superior technology, was defeated by primitives." Vecren's jaw tightened. "They are not primitives, my Emperor. They are something else." The Emperor's eyes darkened. "And what do you suggest we do about this something else?" Vecren exhaled slowly. He knew that his next words could either save his life or end it. "We must adapt. We must study them the way they studied us. We cannot afford to make the same mistake twice." For a long moment, the Emperor was silent. Then, a slow, dangerous smile formed on his face. "You may have failed me, Vecren," he said, "but you have also brought me knowledge. And knowledge is power." The Emperor leaned forward, his claws tapping against his throne. "Tell me, what do we know of their weaknesses?" Vecren hesitated. That was the problem. They didn't know. Every assumption they had made about humanity had been wrong. "They have no centralized command," Vecren said finally. "Their military structure is unpredictable. Their forces are independent, capable of making decisions without direct orders." The Emperor frowned. "That makes them chaotic." "Yes," Vecren agreed, "but that chaos is their strength." The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then he let out a slow, deep chuckle. "Then we will make it their weakness." Vecren's brow furrowed. "My Emperor." The Emperor leaned forward. "You said they infiltrated our systems, yes. Used our own technology against us." Vecren nodded cautiously. "Then we shall do the same," the Emperor said. His voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of destruction. Vecren stiffened. "You mean sabotage?" "Sabotage." The Emperor smiled, revealing razor-sharp fangs. "Deception. Infiltration." A chill ran through Vecren's blood. "We will plant our own virus in their systems," the Emperor continued. "We will learn everything about them, their defenses, their leaders, their worlds. And when they least expect it," his eyes burned with hatred, "we will strike." Vecren felt a dark thrill run through him. This was the Zycran way. The way of the conqueror. They had underestimated the humans. But next time, humanity would not see them coming. The deep void of space stretched endlessly, cold and unforgiving, as the Zycran fleet drifted silently beyond the orbit of Saturn. Their engines remained cold, their systems running at the bare minimum to avoid detection. Their defeat in the first battle had been a devastating blow, but they were not retreating. No, this was merely the beginning of something far greater. Vecren stood in the war room aboard the Harbinger, surrounded by high-ranking Zycran commanders. A holographic display flickered before them, showing an intricate map of Earth's defenses, its orbital stations, military bases, and key infrastructure. The data was incomplete, but it wouldn't be for long. "Our spies have infiltrated their networks," one of the officers reported. "Their cyber defenses are strong, but not impenetrable. We have already begun planting false intelligence and monitoring their communications." Vecren's claws flexed against the table. "What do they know of our survival?" "Nothing yet," the officer said. As far as they're concerned, we fled with our tails between our legs. A cruel smirk formed on Vekran's reptilian face. Good. Let them believe we are broken. He turned to another officer, a specialist in infiltration tactics. And what of the biological study? Have we learned anything about their weaknesses? The officer hesitated. Their biology is remarkable. Vekran narrowed his eyes. Explain. They are resilient beyond logic, the officer said, pulling up a report on the screen. Their bodies repair themselves at an alarming rate. Their soldiers can endure extreme conditions, prolonged combat, and injuries that would leave a Zycran warrior incapacitated. Vekran studied the data carefully. It was true. Humanity's ability to endure was nothing short of terrifying. But there must be something, Vekran pressed. Some flaw. Some vulnerability we can exploit. The officer hesitated again. There is one possibility, he said. Their emotions. Humans form strong emotional bonds with one another. Their entire society is built on cooperation, trust, and loyalty. Unlike our kind, they do not fight as individuals. They fight for something greater, their families, their comrades, their beliefs. Vekran scoffed. How is that a weakness? The officer's eyes gleamed. Because it makes them predictable. We can manipulate their emotions, break their unity, turn them against one another. A silence filled the room. Vekran stroked his chin, considering the implications. If they could fracture humanity's alliances, sow mistrust and confusion, Earth's defenses would crumble from within before the Zycran ever fired a shot. He turned back to the holographic map. Then we will strike where they least expect. We will become ghosts in their systems, shadows in their minds. Before they realize what is happening, they will be at war with themselves. A sinister murmur spread through the room. The Emperor's plan was taking shape. Begin Phase 1, Vekran commanded. Spread disinformation, create false conflicts among their leaders, their nations, their own people, and when they turn on each other. His eyes glowed with a deadly hunger. We will finish what we started. At that moment, across Earth's orbit, an unmarked human vessel drifted quietly through space. Inside, a small group of elite operatives sat in darkness, listening, recording, watching. They had heard everything. And humanity was ready. A cold silence filled the war room aboard the Harbinger, the Zycran Empire's most powerful warship. The massive holographic display flickered, showing the chaos unfolding on Earth. The plan was working, or so they thought. Across the planet, riots had broken out, political tensions had flared, and nations were on the brink of turning against one another. Disinformation spread like wildfire, and the Zycran operatives, hidden within Earth's networks, were fueling the flames of division. Vekran stood tall, his golden armor gleaming under the dim light of the command center. His reptilian features twisted into a grin as he observed the growing disorder. It is only a matter of time now, he muttered. They will destroy themselves from within. But then, something unexpected happened. The riots stopped. The chaos stabilized. Instead of tearing each other apart, humanity united. The leaders of warring nations called for peace, and enemies stood together against a greater threat. Vekran's smirk faded. What is this? One of his officers frantically scanned the data streams, his claws tapping on the controls. Their networks should still be compromised. Their leaders should be in disarray. Another officer looked up, his eyes wide. They found us. Vekran's fists clenched. Impossible. No one detected our infiltration. Then explain this. The officer interrupted, throwing a video feed onto the main display. A human broadcast was being transmitted across every global network. A face filled the screen. General Elias Carter, one of Earth's highest-ranking military leaders. His expression was calm, but his voice carried an unshakable force. To the people of Earth, our enemies believe they can divide us, that they can turn us against each other. They think we are weak. They think we are foolish. But they have underestimated the one thing they cannot control, our unity. The Zycran commanders tensed. We know who is behind this. We know what they have done, and we know what must be done in return." The screen flickered, and suddenly, another video played. Zycran warships, hidden within deep space, were being systematically tracked and exposed. Their infiltration units were being hunted down one by one. Every carefully laid plan was now laid bare for humanity to see. The war room fell into stunned silence. Vikran's claws scraped against the metal table. They should have been too distracted, too broken, to fight back. A low beeping interrupted the tense silence. One of the officers hesitantly answered the incoming transmission. A shadowed figure appeared on the display, one of their spies on Earth. His voice trembled. "Commander, we have lost control of the narrative. The humans, they let us believe we were winning." The realization hit like a thunderbolt. The entire thing had been a trap. Humanity had pretended to fall apart, leading the Zykrans deeper into a false sense of victory. They had allowed the enemy to think they were blind, while quietly watching, waiting, gathering every scrap of intelligence they could. Vikran's eyes burned with fury. "Then we strike now, before they can act." The officers moved swiftly, preparing to launch an immediate assault on Earth. But before they could finalize the attack, every alarm aboard the Harbinger blared at once. Breach detected. Unknown vessels approaching at high velocity. The holographic display flickered again. Hundreds, no, thousands, of human warships were already in position. They had somehow evaded Zycran detection. They were here, and they were ready to fight. The Zycran fleet was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, surrounded. Humanity had played them perfectly. Vikran's mouth curled into a snarl, his mind racing. "Prepare for battle. We will not fall to these inferior creatures." But deep down, a terrifying truth clawed at his mind. The Zycran Empire had always believed itself to be superior. They had thought of humanity as nothing more than primitive savages. Yet in this moment, as Earth's forces closed in, one undeniable reality became clear. They were never the hunters. They were the hunted.